Southern Ontario sports fans. Thank you so very much for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH and Parrot Media platform. I'm Bubba O'Neill. You know, sports out of the Golden Horseshoe is always our thing, and as the calendar flips amazingly from August to September, there is one event that takes center stage in the Steel City, and it's all about someone called the Argonauts and the Tiger Cats. And as the old saying goes in Hamilton, I don't care how many games you win, just beat those damn Argos on Labor Day.
Right now, tied again, 23 apiece, clock running midway through the fourth quarter. And after a 5-yard, no yards penalty at the 21. Picked off, James Cotton! Touchdown! It's not tied anymore! What a read by James Cotton!
Chris Cuthbert and Glenn Suter on TSN 2005. What a game that was. And I said off the top, Scott Radley, as we bring him in to talk about everything about Labor Day and what goes into it. That was a 1-18 going into that Labor Day Classic, and they ended up with 5 victories that year. So they got the job done on Labor Day.
Yeah, thanks to that Damon Allen pass. That was a stinker. That was a good quarterback throwing maybe one of his worst passes ever. That was horrible. But yes, there have been some Labor Days where they've come in, last year being one of them, came in 2-9, and you're looking at it saying, the season's gone. Just win this game. Give us something. Thankfully, that's not the case this year. There's something bigger to play for. But, yeah, there have been a few of those games.
But, again, as you said, thankfully for this season, it doesn't mean that much in terms of, just being the only thing that we win. Anyway, let's get to this. There's something that I need to discuss. And Steve Milton, who you and I have, yes, your friend, Steve Milton, who you've worked generations with almost,
yes.
And myself as well.
52 years.
52 years you guys worked together.
Not really.
I thought it would probably be about that.
Actually, this week we were in a media conference and we were talking to Casey Sales, and
yes.
Steve was not there that one day, and Casey says, "Where's Steve?" I said, "Oh, you need some time off. He is 88 years old." Casey looks at me like, "Really? Is he really 88? He looks great." And I was like, no, he's not 88. I don't know how old he is, but he's not 88. Anyway.
Well, the point is he knows Hamilton sports.
He knows Hamilton sports.
As well as anyone. And he wrote this, and it really kind of hit me, and maybe you can decipher this. If you want to get a 3-hour snapshot of Hamilton, come to a Ticats game. If you want to see the whole movie of this city's soul and history, come to the Labor Day Classic. Where's Milty going with this?
Well, I think that there is certainly something to be said that the Labor Day game is our annual celebration of sports. There are other things that have happened in the city, obviously, over the years, bigger sports events, the Canada Cup or the Grey Cup in 72 or Ben Johnson returning. I mean, you can go through the whole list. There's a lot of them. But on a yearly basis, on an every year, set your calendar for this kind of thing, there is no sports event and probably no event. I mean, is there another, take away sports, is there another event in this city that's as consistent and big and automatic and talked about as Labor Day game? I don't think so. I think that's probably the one.
I think it's amazing, and we're very fortunate in the jobs that we do, but there are some real hardworking people out there in the city where their one major event of the year, saving up their money for entertainment because they've got bills to pay, maybe this one game.
And this one game primarily, not always, but primarily when the team is doing well. Because last year, there were some seats available. This year, as I recall, it's a sellout and then some. So, when the team is doing well, and, it doesn't cost as much to go to a Ticat game as it does to go to an NFL game. But it's still, for a lot of people, it's still some money that they could use on other things. So you're right. It's nice to have a team that's winning. It's nice to have a team that's got the best offense in the league, because I know defense wins championships, but offense wins entertainment. Mm-hmm. And it's great to see your team win every game 6-3. and win every game. At the same time, a lot of fans would probably say, okay, I'll take a few more losses, but put some points on the board. And this team does. And so they're an entertaining team to watch most weeks, not last game when they scored 9 against Saskatchewan, but most weeks. And so there's reason and enticement to come out and watch.
This is a tough question because it comes from the Hamilton perspective. But when you look at it from the Toronto perspective, there are people that have told me this. I don't believe it because I'm from this side of the rivalry. And they say that it's not a rivalry.
It isn't.
And that it needs to be two teams that, are battling for something, and that there are not enough people in the GTA, we'll say, that cheer for the Double Blue to make this a true rivalry.
I agree with that 100%. And now the teams have a rivalry, the players on the field, but I do agree with that, and it's unfortunate because it really matters to a lot of people in Hamilton. I mean, this game really matters that Hamilton wins, and that's great, but how many people in Toronto, I mean, part of a rivalry, and it sounds sadistic, but part of a rivalry is that when you win, the other side feels pain. Go down to the States, Michigan State, or, pick your Alabama, Clemson, or whoever.
Florida State.
Sure. The point of it is that you get to rub it into the other team and their fans, and they feel horrible. And so it really matters that you win. If Hamilton wins and you talk to 99 people out of 100, 99.9999 people out of 100 in Toronto, how many people really care there? And unfortunately, the number is really small. And so that, to me, it doesn't take away from what this game means to people here. But to me, it's a far more... it's a far bigger deal and a far more healthy situation when Toronto cares about this as well. Because even though Hamilton's won 8 of the last 10, there is something to be said for occasionally Hamilton losing it, so you understand why you want to win so badly. If you only ever experience good stuff, you don't understand how good it is that you're feeling.
Yeah, but the problem with the Ticats is that they've had such bad win-loss records within it, right? That going 10-0 would be okay with me.
And I get your I understand your point. And 8 out of 10 in the Labor Day game is great. I mean, you'll take that percentage all the time. But those two remind you here in Hamilton, they remind you how much we hate losing this game, so the 8 feels special. If you won every year, I mean, kind of like go back to the early days of hockey or whatever, when Canada won all the time. And you all of a sudden, why did it matter so much when we finally got to the Salt Lake City Olympics that Canada won? Because we hadn't won in a while, and you forgot how good it feels to win.
Yep.
And so, look, I don't want Hamilton to lose. I'm not arguing for that. I'm saying simply that the idea that there might be some people in Toronto who this would matter to makes the game a much bigger deal. And I wish that would come back. I don't know that it will, but I wish that it would.
Laura, can we throw up the facts and figures board? There's something on this that completely shocks me when you look back at the history of this rivalry. And there are some interesting stats. Their largest crowd, as you talk about, Tiger Cats winning 8 out of the last 10. I mean, the history is amazing. Tiger Cats lead the series, but it's by a large, large margin. But the last line is what blows me away. Mm-hmm. What were the Canadian Football League what were they trying to do to us? Putting Montreal, Baltimore, and Ottawa as the Labor Day opponent. Well, what possibly could they have been thinking?
And I think there might have been a BC game in there as well.
What?
One year. I think there might have been a BC game. Yeah, put it this way, that every once in a while, we've just, for example, seen down in the States, and I don't want to get political, but we've seen down in the States a huge uproar about Cracker Barrel. All right, where you've got this business that works, and someone comes along and says, I know it works, but let's change everything because I can make it better. And you say, well, wait a second, it's working pretty well. Do we want to risk screwing the whole thing up for a minuscule improvement, or just, tinker with what we've got and stick with the basic premise? And that, to me, feels a lot like what happens here, that every once in a while, every few years, somebody in the head office says, I got a good idea. let's put Toronto against Montreal and throw Ottawa in there. And there are certain things that just work, and they should be essentially automatic and untouchable, and you don't even give 5 seconds of thought to this. It just is. And when the day comes, and it may, in 50 years and 100 years, we may get bored of this. It might be 20 years, but we get bored and people stop coming and people say, I wish we saw someone other than Toronto. Okay, then. But until that time, there's nobody around here that's complaining about Toronto being here for Labor Day ever. So just leave it.
I'm trying to imagine a boardroom situation for whenever those plans were made to play those other teams. And as you said, maybe even BC. And they went, great idea. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's tweak it.
Yeah, the fans will be okay with that. They'll want that. That's what they want. So dumb.
See, the only argument that I think you could possibly
there is no argument
make. No, and I'm not pushing for this. You could theoretically have someone in the boardroom come forward and say, we need to alternate homes between playing Labor Day in Toronto or Hamilton. I could see somebody trying to make that case. I don't agree with it because you're not drawing anybody in Toronto, but I could see somebody coming up with that idea, and then someone saying, again, why are we tinkering with what works? I don't even mind, and I kind of like it, the idea, and they're not doing it this year, and it's been the case a lot, where you play in Toronto the week after. You go back-to-back. I like that idea. So make it a back-to-back Labor Day, beginning of September thing, and then Toronto gets their regular, again, scheduled by the calendar game as well. I got no problem with that. But yeah, it just, every once in a while, somebody comes along who thinks, I got a great idea that no one's thought of. And what needs to happen is immediately whoever the commissioner is at the time or someone says, just stop. We're not even going there. We've got other problems. We got World Cup games that we're playing in the wrong places, and let's just deal with the stuff that's a problem, not the stuff that works.
Yeah, the CFL gets in its way, and I love it. We both love it. We love this league. But boy, do they get in their own way sometimes.
Every once in a while, you shake your head.
It makes no sense. It's funny that you talk about the back-to-back situation there. When we showed that 2005 clip that the Tiger Cats won by 3, the next week actually it wasn't even the next week. It was a couple of days later, the Saturday afternoon, because the game was played on Monday, and they got whacked 33-0. Damon Allen got his revenge.
It's a crazy, crazy, crazy idea, and I'm sure it's never been brought up, and I may just be doing exactly what I said the CFL shouldn't do. I would love to see a schedule one year where every single game that you play with the opponents is back-to-back. So you play BC, home and home. You play Calgary, home and home. You play Edmonton, home and home. Play them right in a row, get it out of the way, and you play. And then, you know what? I bet the teams would love it because your scouting is way easier. You get the rivalry stuff that goes. I mean, it may be a crazy idea for all kinds of reasons, and it would only really work if you got that 10th team. Because once you get the 10th team, you're playing every team. There's no odd number of games. There's no 3 times. You're playing every team twice, home and away. You could do the whole schedule back-to-back, build storylines. I mean, it may be a crazy idea, but
because look what happens in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, right? The Banjo Bowl the very next week in Winnipeg, and it's because Troy Westwood had some really racist things to say about the people in Saskatchewan when he was playing for Winnipeg, and it's like, why do we always have to go there for Labor Day, right? And to your point of what we discussed there, and then they developed the Banjo Bowl, and that has become, arguably the best 1-2 home and home series the CFL has going.
Yeah, but again, I'd love to see it be tried, but it can only work if you have 10 teams.
Yeah.
Because that 10 teams, you got an 18-game schedule. That means you're playing 9 other teams. That's 2 each. And you could do it, and it would be so easy for the schedule makers. It would be, you got bye weeks to factor in and all that kind of stuff. But you just have the buys at the same time.
It's a 2-game series. It makes too much sense, Scott.
It probably does.
Canadian football.
It probably does.
on that note, then, as we bring up some of the other teams as well, too, I mean, we do have two other games that are considered Labor Day classics, and the fact that Calgary are hosting Edmonton and Saskatchewan are hosting Winnipeg, and of course, as we talk about Ticats hosting Toronto, I'll ask you straight up: is the Toronto-Hamilton matchup the best going in the Canadian Football League?
The problem with the Toronto-Hamilton matchup to be declared the best is that it's so rare that both those teams are good at the same time. It just doesn't happen very often.
So true.
Whereas Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, lately anyway, more likely. In years past, Calgary, Edmonton, they've often been pretty good at the same time. As far as, and again, in those two other examples, each city really cares. Toronto fans just don't care, and so in Hamilton, we would probably say this is the best matchup. I just don't know objectively if you can. I don't know if you can objectively say it's the best rivalry in the league. Because again, to me, a rivalry has to go both ways, and right now, what it is, it's a hatred, but it's a one-way hatred.
I think you have to go with Saskatchewan and Winnipeg. And only based on the fact that...
You mean right now or generally?
I think right now, at least in recent, and recency bias here, no doubt about it. Because you do have, and even though the Ticats have drawn some good crowds, they're drawing better crowds in Winnipeg. I mean, I think we're looking at 11 straight sellouts.
Well, Saskatchewan's really good. Yeah. Winnipeg is showing signs of finding their form.
Exactly.
This year...
You're talking about the field. I'm talking about the fan bases.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the fan bases and the fact that you got 11 straight sellouts in Winnipeg. The Saskatchewan, they sold out against Hamilton, and the crowds are rising. Obviously,
the two best stadiums in the league.
The two best stadiums in the league. They just look amazing, and that they're both kind of arguing against each other. Not so much about the quality of their teams, but they're actually arguing about who's the loudest fans in the league. And I think that gets into it a little bit there. To your point there about it being a little one-sided here in Hamilton. There is something, and as I said, it became so big that they had to create, quote, the Banjo Bowl.
Mm-hmm. I would love it if Toronto could figure out, and I don't know how. I mean, like this is not a slam on MLSE who owns the Argo. I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do to try and get the Argos back to some sort of real relevance. And I know that those who are fans will say, we got diehard fans. Yeah, you do. They have diehard fans.
They're all 80 years old.
And there's not a ton of them. I mean, we were down in I was down at the game earlier this year, the Kenny Lawler 700-yard receiving game against them. And there were, I know there was some criticism from a particular commentator about how few Ticat fans there were. We saw quite a few Ticat fans, and they seemed from the press box, which is glassed in and inside, you can't get a full grasp of it, but they seemed as engaged as the Argo fans did in the Argos stadium. And so I don't know what the answer is. 10-cent beer? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But
the Looney Dogs seem to be working.
It works for the Jays. It works for the Jays. I don't know what the answer is. And I don't know, honestly, if there is an answer, especially right now, because you not only have the difficulty of trying to get people to follow the Argos, but we do live in the shadow of Buffalo. And a lot of people around here are Bills fans. Not everyone around here who's an NFL fan cheers for the Bills, but a lot do. And the Bills are really good right now. If the Bills were back in their state that they were 10 years ago, maybe you've got a little more of an opening, but especially now. We are a week away from the start of the NFL season. And if you're a football fan in Toronto, unfortunately, all the oxygen in the room is going to be sucked up by the Bills and the rest of the NFL. And that's a tough thing to compete with if you don't have a baseline. And you're right. I mean, I don't think they're all 80 years old in Toronto, but a lot of them are getting up there. And, that's not really, you want those people. We're not dismissing the older fans, but you got to backfill that with younger people and people who are really, engaged. And it's tough. It's really tough.
Let's go back to the past again for one thing. And I think this is interesting. I've heard different conversations about this, about the game and the rivalry between the Ticats and the Argonauts. Was it a little bit more rowdy in Iverwin Stadium than it is in Hamilton Stadium?
So my first... So when I started in Hamilton, I actually, at the Spec, I started as an editor. And I became a columnist in 2002. And my first day was Labor Day. My first column as a columnist was writing about the Labor Day game. And that, things were a little different. There was a little more access back then. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to write about the game per se. And I went and stood between the two benches on the sideline. And let me tell you, there were things that, I know this is a podcast, so I may have a little more leeway.
Yeah. Go wild.
I'm not going to go wild.
I got a bleep button.
There were things that were said, and there were like 8-year-olds with their parents screaming stuff at the Argos that I was like, wow. All right, this is not how my dad would have let me talk to anybody, even if it wasn't a game. But it was wild. And the funniest part was, so that was a year that Mike Morreale was with the Argos then. Oh. I believe that was anyway, and Montford was there, and O'Shea was there. So they were fired up. The fans, not the players too, but the fans were fired up. And the funniest part was that there was a guy on the Argos then. He was a linebacker who'd been drafted by Hamilton, but I don't believe ever played, named Charles Assman. So he's got Assman on the back of his shirt. And that was like putting, I don't know what, putting, meat in front of people who have been starving for weeks. It was so unbelievably abusive. And it was, I'm sure he was used to it. You got that name on the back of your shirt. This is not your first game of football. You've heard it nonstop for your whole life.
29,000 Hamilton football fans.
Probably mostly intoxicated Hamilton football fans.
Sorry, his name was?
Charles Assman. Look it up. Assmann. He played for Toronto for 1 year. He played, I think, in Edmonton other times. And of course, you're on the sideline, so the back of your shirt is facing the crowd. And I don't know that anybody knew this guy before he shows up, but he's on the sideline with that name pointing at them. It's like a flashing beacon for abuse. Oh, it was unbelievable. Another one, and I believe, I stand to be corrected, I believe this was a Labor Day game. One of my all-time favorite things that ever happened. We're up in the press box, and the Canadian Thunderbirds, the parachute team? The Canadian Thunderbirds, I believe it was Labor Day. And
what a disaster.
They were going to be skydiving, delivering a ball into Iverwin Stadium. And so you've got the plane flying up above, and you see the first guy come out. Well, what nobody apparently checked was it was howling winds that day. And so we're up in the press box, and I'm sitting beside Steve Milton, and I think Ted Michaels from CHML might have been on my other side. And all of a sudden, these guys that are diving down, that are supposed to be landing in the stadium, they're over there. They're blowing across the city into the East End. Well, one guy adjusts. And so one guy comes, misses the stadium altogether. Another guy crashes into the side of the scoreboard because he can't control. And then the funniest one is, it wasn't funny at the time, he is coming right down, and he's getting pretty low and looks like he's going to go right into the hydro wires. And it's the first time I've ever done this. Steve Milton and I were holding hands, almost praying, like, he's going to die. And he adjusts, and it's on, what's the street on the west end of the stadium? Is that Balsam?
Balsam or Beach?
Whichever one. And he adjusts and does some shimmy thing, and we're like, whew, missed. Well, he lands on the street in front of a bus that's driving along that didn't expect to see a guy fall out of the sky and almost got run over by the bus. It was hilarious. In retrospect, it was hilarious.
You're right, because we can laugh about that now. And I was on the field for that, and I could not believe there was a guy that got caught in a tree too. I actually went looking for those visuals, and
it was one of the
we
best
intros. We probably have them somewhere, just can't find them.
It was one of the best intros.
For those that never saw it, maybe, yes, easily you talk about misfits and things that just completely went wrong.
Yep.
The idea was great. I mean, and remember, these were professional skydivers. They were really outstanding skydivers. Guys. And it all went
well. There was one other one, which, again, I also think was Labor Day, although, again, I could be corrected on this. And it was, you may remember that a number of years ago at Ivor Wynn, they put in a new artificial turf. It was like $1.5 million to put it in. And shortly after they put it in, they had a giant fireworks display at the end of the game.
Oh my goodness.
This is early, maybe the first or second year of the Bob Young era. And the fireworks were going to be launched from these 4 pedestals they set up at center field. And so anyway, the game's over and everyone sticks around for the fireworks, and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, you know, blah, blah. And the music starts and the fireworks start shooting, but the one pedestal fell over facing towards the west end zone and now starts firing tracers across the turf. And people who were in, if you remember the old stadium, they had canvas VIP tents at the one end, and people are scrambling because suddenly there's rockets shooting towards these tents. And the field has patches of fire. The field has caught on fire. So now they're bringing out fire extinguishers. And meanwhile, there's like blazes everywhere. And I remember the guy who was the head of marketing at the time is standing in the end zone beside me with his hands on his knees going, oh man, I'm fired. I'm fired. So I ended up writing. I forgot all about that. I ended up writing about this turf now, this brand new turf. It's like a week old, has meter circular burn marks the next day. And I remember writing about it and saying that, like, the beginning of this looked like the early salvos in the fall of Baghdad. And I remember, I think it was Dave Sauvé, who was the president of the team, came up the next day. He goes, "Really, the fall of Baghdad? That's what we're going with." It was great. It was, again,
I'm glad
laughing
you brought
at it
that
after.
one up. I mean, the skydiving I remember crisply. That one I had forgotten all about. That was worse. Maybe, yeah, because the injury factor could have been much worse in this.
There was one tracer that went under a van that was parked in the field, and now there's this burning thing under a pickup truck or something that they're trying to put out. And the other part was it was really windy, and at the end with the circular seats, the east end, all the smoke is blowing there, so everyone's there trying to like cover their eyes because now all the residue is blowing. It was hysterical. It was so funny that in retrospect that the way this thing went.
Total hijinks.
There's been a bunch.
Total hijinks. What a mess. What's not a mess is the 2025 Hamilton Tiger Cats. Let's talk about this group right now. Coming off the bye week, a disappointing showing in Regina against the Rough Riders. And I would say, hey, at that point, 6 starters not playing, 4 games in 20 days. They had enough. And I'm not saying they would have beaten Saskatchewan, but I think they would have had a much better showing in a game where it got a lot of national hype about East, best in the East versus best in the West, and everyone said it turned out to be a blowout. And they were 29-9, whatever you want to think. But is this Tiger Cat team ready for the assignment on Monday?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because they are 4-0 against the East this year. They're 2-4 against the West. So they're absolutely ready for Monday. They can beat the Argos. They've shown they can beat the Argos. They pummeled the Argos the one time they played them in Toronto. The much more interesting thing to me now is, can you beat the best teams in the West? When Calgary rolls in here a little later on in the year, what are you going to do with them? If you happen to run into Saskatchewan again, they got Edmonton, which was one of the terrible teams in the league at the start of the year, but suddenly seems to have found their game. BC gave them real problems and beat them here at home. So there's nobody in the East, I think, if you're a Ticat fan, that is causing you a great deal of concern right now. I think that the Ticats have this glorious path to the Grey Cup game. It's what do you do with the West? And I wrote this earlier this week. Here's the twist for Ticat fans that actually, you beat Toronto this week. If you beat Toronto, you create some real problems for the Argos because now they're 3-9. Hamilton has the tiebreaker against them. Hamilton would be up by 4 games plus the tiebreaker. You're 5 games ahead with 7 left.
Yeah, 7 go.
And Toronto will have 6 left. You've basically eliminated Toronto. And Ottawa, I don't know what Ottawa is, but they're not a great team either this year. So
they're 3-6.
They're 3-8 as well right now. Yeah, they're tied with Toronto. Both of those teams are at real danger of falling to the crossover. Edmonton now is ahead of them. BC is ahead of them. They're in 4th and 5th. So you got a real likelihood that the crossover is going to happen. If you're Hamilton, you don't necessarily want that this year. You want to play East teams until the Grey Cup, because let's say that Edmonton ends up with the crossover and Edmonton plays Montreal. Montreal's on their 4th string quarterback right now. Montreal's a decent team, but they're in trouble because of their injuries. Edmonton wins that game. Yeah, the next game is in Hamilton, but playing Edmonton, I think, the way they are going, is a much tougher game than playing Montreal or Toronto or Ottawa.
Yep.
So,
a motivated Cody Fajardo for sure.
I don't know that you necessarily want to have to play a West team with your record against them before the Grey Cup, but you may have to. Even if you finish first and get the bye, your first playoff game may be against a Western team. I look at it and I don't think they can't beat them. I mean, they've got 2 wins against Western teams. Mm-hmm. But it's a tougher spot. It's a tougher situation that you could be facing this year. Unlike other years when you look at it and you go, man, if we could just have like last year where the 2 teams in the West at the bottom stunk as well. So there was no crossover. Imagine if the West was, those 2 teams were pitiful again. Hamilton finishes first, which, could happen. You get a bye and then you play 1 weak Eastern team and you're into the Grey Cup game. That's the golden path. It could still happen.
We've had teams in the crossover that have won the first game, but never the East Final.
There's never been a crossover team that
that's made it. They've tried, but it just hasn't happened. Bo Levi Mitchell, 7-0 or 8-0 in on Labor Day. Now a lot of that has to do with Calgary, but you go back to last year, boy, he was pinpoint and had the fans rocking on a big win. His confidence level right now seems real good.
It is. So is Nick Arbuckle for Toronto. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, he's now got the most passing yards in the league. He suddenly has emerged. So
a lot of interceptions, though.
He has a lot of touchdowns, a lot of interceptions, a lot of passing yards. Their offense looked really good against BC. I still expect Hamilton is going to win this game because the matchup, we saw what the matchup was earlier in the year. And Hamilton dominated Toronto all over the field. Now, you're going to be missing a couple players. I get that. I don't think that the last game against Saskatchewan was the real Bo Levi Mitchell. I don't expect that against a good defense in Saskatchewan that he's going to go off for 50 points.
No.
But I expect, and I think generally he's going to be better than 9 points. The likelihood of Toronto winning, to me, the likelihood of Toronto winning this game is low. I fully expect Hamilton to win this. As I expect them to beat Montreal next week. Again, they're onto their 4th string quarterback. Imagine if that was here. It's tough times. Montreal, when Hamilton got their first win of the year this year, it was against Montreal, and everybody around here was so excited because Montreal was a really good team that's just been decimated. And they've still got a good defense, but they're going to be in a tough spot. And
they can't score.
No, and Ottawa, as I say, I don't think that Ottawa's schedule is lying. Or the standings, the record is lying. I think the record is what the record is.
I thought Ottawa was going to be a real good team this year. They made some real stout moves, getting in Geno Lewis, Drew Brown healthy, which he's been knocked out 3 different times this year. They can't get it going, and there's a lot of pressure on the head coach. Probably a lot of pressure on general manager Sean Burke as well, too.
Oh, I think absolutely.
Tough times.
Absolutely. And you've got Bo Levi Mitchell, who one of the huge advantages Hamilton has is that he is playing smart football as far as not taking shots. I'm not even talking about interceptions and anything. He's getting rid of the ball so that he's not getting pounded. And as a result, he's been on his feet every game this year. He started every game this year. There's not a lot of CFL teams that have got that in their quiver that they can point to that and say, we've had our starter on the field.
It's almost a luxury.
It's not almost. It is absolutely a luxury. It's a massive luxury to have that, especially in this league. And so, and us talking about it, no, if by chance somewhere down the road he gets hurt, it's not a jinx. We didn't a touch of an ear, whatever. But no, he has for the past 2 years, after that first year at Hamilton where things went horribly wrong with injuries, where he had the injury early on and then the injury later on, he has stayed out of harm's way primarily. And when he's run, he's gone down. He's in a good way. He's gotten out of the way of the big shots. And the offensive line has been, Hamilton has a really interesting offensive line because they have kept Bo Levi Mitchell safe, which is really the bottom line priority. But they haven't been able to do the second part of their job particularly well, which is blast open holes for the running game. That part of the game has been mediocre, but the protection part has been great. And I think if you were to ask any CFL coach, any football coach, would you rather that our offensive line created some holes for the offense, for the running back, or kept our quarterback alive? Every one of them would say, keep the quarterback alive first, and then we'll worry about the other part second.
None of it makes sense from someone that played the position, not at that level, but understands a position. And anyone that has played offensive line, it's a lot easier to go forward and hit somebody than have good footwork, good handwork, and protect the quarterback from blitzes coming from anywhere. Which they, as you said,
but it's a mindset too, right?
It is a mindset.
If you're deciding that we're going to protect, because we look at our receiving core and we believe that our receiving core can beat you. We want some running, we want some rushing, but our receiving core can beat you if our quarterback is in the game. If your mindset is protection first, it might explain a little bit why the running game has been.
But physically, when you know the snap count and you're going forward, you should be blasting people off the line. And you're right. They've I don't want to say struggled, but their running game is not as good as you would think it would be for a team with their record.
They have not had a single dominant run. I think the top running game this year, the top running back run was 106 yards, maybe. I think you have to look that one up, but there hasn't been a game.
I didn't think we got to the century mark
well,
yet.
Look, I mean, this at Monday's game, the alumnus of distinction is Jesse Lumsden that they're honoring. They've had nobody have a Jesse Lumsden style game this year from the running back position where all of a sudden he goes off.
Well, remember we had that long streak that no one had a 1,000-yard rushing game until like DeAndre Cobb. It went back that far. It's crazy. It's crazy that it is very. Scott Milanovic wants to pass the ball. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Right. But
and he's got the tools to do it.
He certainly does. Well, he's got the tools to have a better running game as well too. So
the amazing part to me about what has happened with the passing game is, Kenny Lawler's been tremendous, and Tim White has been really good, and Keandre Smith has been really good. I just can't believe that Shamar Bridges has been as much a forgotten man as he has been, and I don't have the explanation.
He's playing in outer space in that position.
I know, but you've got a guy who was a finalist for the Rookie of the Year last year.
Sure, he was the team Rookie of the Year. Yeah. Had almost broke the rookie record, broke the team rookie record.
And a guy who showed how good he can be. Yeah. And I thought, maybe as the year goes on, you move guys around so you get him more involved. And I mean, if they could ever figure out the magic way to try and get Bridges more involved there, now all of a sudden, that wide side, they've got so many good receivers right now that I understand why Bo and Milanovic want to throw the ball, because you can't. The question becomes, the Grey Cup is in Winnipeg this year.
Yep.
If they get to the Grey Cup, I'm guessing that November the 13th, is it something like that? November the 11th or the 13th in Winnipeg might be chilly, possibly snowy, possibly a combination of both. And I remember that game that the Ticats played in the Grey Cup against Saskatchewan in Saskatchewan.
Oh.
When it was so blisteringly cold, and I don't care how great your receivers are, it's hard to catch a ball. when it's that cold.
Brandon Banks here a couple of weeks ago talking about that game, said it was the most horrible game that he's ever been a part of.
You can keep your hands as warm as you try to, but as soon as you go into that route, in the few seconds that you're running with the wind and everything else, it's hard. And it always amazes me when you watch pro football players catch balls in those conditions, because it is so hard to do that. But to have a running game that you can rely on in a game like that, especially if the turf gets slick. And right now, that to me, I don't know whether Hamilton has that. And when they played Saskatchewan, which, everyone said was a Grey Cup preview potentially, you look at a guy like A.J. Ouellette and you go, okay, if it gets really nasty weather, who do I want coming out of my backfield, and which team's running game do I want? Do I want Greg Bell, who's had his moments, or do I want A.J. Ouellette, who looks like a bull a lot of the time and he's just really difficult to deal with? And that's not a tough question.
Well, we've got 8 games to figure that out, or maybe 10. Let's see what happens. All starts with Labor Day.
But, the beauty of it, we could go, I know, but the beauty of it is in the position that Hamilton's in right now. They've put themselves in a good spot, because if they beat Toronto this week, and then if they beat Montreal next week, and I really believe they should win both those games, they have all but guaranteed themselves a playoff spot. It would be something mystical and something for them at that point, when you are up 5 games, you have a 5 or 6 game lead on the 2 bottom teams in the division, and 6 or 7 games left to not make the playoffs would be the greatest collapse in the history of football. So you've now got time to start working on some of the stuff that we're talking about, to work on the running it. I know you want first place, but the way Montreal's going, I'd be shocked if they can win, especially if you beat them next week and open up with the tiebreaker, a 3-game lead. You've now got time to start working on some of those things a little bit more, which is hugely helpful. It's hugely helpful. And rest a few guys, and you've got guys who are banged up a bit. These next 2 weeks are going to have a massive impact on the rest of the season and the playoff run for Hamilton.
Never really thought about it that way. You're right. You could basically lock yourself up real good, but they got to win those games first. As they say, they got to play the game.
They're both winnable.
They are certainly winnable. Any team, I think, that they play right now, I really truly believe, and of course they're 0-2 against Saskatchewan, but I believe the Hamilton Tiger Cats can beat anyone in the Canadian Football League, and that includes Calgary as well too. We'll see.
Look, they've beaten 2 Western teams. They can win those games. Yep. They're just, for whatever reason, they are. And I talked to some of the players earlier in the year. Is there a difference in when you play a Western team? Is there a difference in the style? And they all go, no. But there is a different challenge this year anyway when you're playing the top teams. When you're playing Saskatchewan, when you're playing Calgary, they've obviously, as I said, had struggles against BC. They won that first BC game, but probably shouldn't have, and then lost the second one.
Yep. I don't think they should have lost the second one.
Well, you can argue it either way, but they came back and won it late against BC and then lost it. But it is a tough thing, and that's where your real challenge lies, because I don't see any team in the East. It would not shock me at all if at the end of this season, Hamilton had a 0 at the end of the record against the East. Wouldn't shock me at all if they didn't lose a game to the Eastern teams this year.
It all starts with beating those East teams, though, and get yourself in position to win that Grey Cup. As Simone Lawrence says, the beauty of the Canadian Football League, especially playing in the East, is that you finish first, you just got to win one game. Just got to win one game to get to the show. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
And generally, obviously, at home as well, too. They're in good position, Scott. Let's hope for a good Labor Day Classic. It's been great kind of breaking down some old times. Thanks for putting some negative thoughts in my brain.
Negative thoughts? We didn't even talk about the time of the fight outside the stadium after when the one fan bit the ear off the other fan. And and I just remembered one other one, which again I think was Labor Day that day. There was a year when they started the Labor Day game at either 6 or 7 for some reason.
The alcoholism.
And people drank all day, and it was insanity. And it was the one with the fight outside where one guy had his ear bitten off.
That's why that was the last one.
But the other thing that happened that game, I'm pretty sure it was that game, was some idiot fan ran on the field and got away from the security guards who, were not exactly Carl Lewis-like.
No.
And got, I don't know if anyone remembers this, got to the goalpost and shimmied up the goalpost and was now hanging by the flag. That's all he was holding on to, was the orange flag. Yes. Thankfully, it was attached by a chain to the post and didn't give out. Because we asked afterwards, the police, if that guy had fallen, what would have happened? Thankfully, he didn't. But he was just holding on by a piece of cloth. And they said, well, because the police were on the field chasing him, the police were involved, which would have meant that was an SIU investigation. And if he had fallen and hurt himself, they would have had to seal off that part of the field for an investigation. And that game probably would have had to have been stopped and restarted the next day. So the underlying point is this game this week starts at 2:30, which still gives people time to have a few beers, but hopefully not get so blotto that they just completely lose their minds and everything goes haywire.
Stay off the field, guys.
Yeah, do that too. Do that too.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right, folks, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And if you just seen and heard, we love talking about local sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast, we want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we always appreciate your comments. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so much. Please enjoy the Labor Day Classic safely. And we'll see you real soon.